From Swoop, it's Take the Plunge, a podcast about how business owners decided to stop what they were doing and took the plunge. Sorry, you need to cough. Sorry, dude.
You fucked it up already, Jesus.
We know, yeah, we're going to be here all day.
I'll cancel the rest of my afternoon.
Clear it all, clear it all. From Swoop, it's Take the Plunge, a podcast about how business owners decided to stop what they were doing and took the plunge to start their own businesses. We take a look at how they came to that decision and what those first crucial steps were in getting their business up and running. My name's Kieran and I'll be your host for this episode. Today, I'm really delighted to be joined by Dee Gettrick, who's the founder and CEO of YouFurnish.com. YouFurnish.com is a furniture and furnishings website that's revolutionizing the way we search and discover things for our home. YouFurnish.com brings together the widest range of retailers from over 100 high street names to smaller independents, all in one place, giving everyone the confidence that they found the perfect item. Dee's passion stems back to when she was a young kid in her family's drapery shop and being drawn in by all the homes and all the customers that were coming through those doors. And then how it all kind of came to fruition was through frustration, like a lot of business owners, in terms of after that exciting moment of purchasing her very first home, it came down to the nitty gritty of how to furnish it and all the frustrations that came with it. And I think a sense of, I could probably do this a bit better. So fast forward to today, Dee proudly leads a team who share this mission of transforming the way we all shop for our homes. They believe it should be simple for everyone to create their dream home, which is why they bring together over 100 UK most exciting retailers from John Lewis, Wayflyer, to I'll re-record that last bit, Dee, so we'll just continue on and then I'll get those names right. But welcome to the pod, Dee. Thank you so much for joining us today. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to speak.
Great. So as I alluded to there in the intro, YouFurnish is kind of born out one of natural affinity towards furnishing from your own family background, but by the sounds of things, it really started from a frustration after purchasing your home. Can you talk to me how it all happened and then how the business started to forming from that frustration?
Yeah, I suppose from a young age, I've always loved interiors. So I was waiting for the Friday property section to come. I was cutting up the Argus catalogue. And Barbie is being released on Friday into the cinema. Will you be going to see it, Kieran?
Yeah, maybe.
Absolutely, I'm sure. Yeah. I grew up a tomboy, but I was.
You're not going to see
laughing.
Oppenheimer then?
I was laughing with somebody today because I hated dolls.
Yeah.
But about age 9, I got into playing with Barbie, just as all my friends were getting out of playing with it. But what I realised is that I had no interest in Barbie, frankly. But what I did like was I was building her houses. And I was painting matchstick boxes and putting a little thumbtack in it because that was a little bedside drawer. So I've always loved interiors, and I found a way to make it work with all these different elements. And then, fast forward number of years, working in the city in London, buying an apartment, and finally I've got my own little real interiors project, and boy was I prepared. I had screenshots, I had paper cutouts from the last decade. I knew what I wanted to do, and all I needed to do was to buy the furniture. How hard could that be?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, that's where frustration struck. I couldn't find the products, and if you're watching and you can see the video, there is a big mirror behind me, and it sort of looks a bit like a window. It's an arched mirror, and it's got all like little sort of panes with it. And I remember I wanted one of these. And I was looking, and we were at a corporate event at the Chelsea Flower Show, and I saw one, and I rushed over, and I was like, oh my God, I've been looking for a mirror like this for so long. This is it. This is amazing. And she said, oh yeah, it's $3,000. And I was like, sorry, how much?
God.
How much? $3,000. Who spends $3,000 on a mirror? I can't afford that much. So I walked away very disappointed, and the search continued. But I found one, and here it is. And it was actually on sale, so it was about £300. So much cheaper than the $3,000 I would have had to drop originally to find what I was looking for.
Just the 90%.
Yeah. But I suppose that was sort of the idea, is that you've got an idea, there's lots of inspiration out there. How do you find the product? And what I was doing was individually searching on each furniture retailer. John Lewis, Wayfair, Habitat, Heels, Tesco Home, Soho Home, all the budgets. And I was like, but I only know a certain number of the retailers. Where's the rest of the retailers? because
Yeah.
I want to see all the products regardless of who's selling it. And that was the moment, that was the light bulb. Why isn't there an aggregator?
Yeah.
There's a lot of industries out there that have an aggregator that help us to search vast amounts. If we think of hotels, booking.com, if we think of
Hmm.
Rightmove for real
Hmm.
estate, there was really great inspiration there to say we need a solution like this for furniture.
So, just pausing on that, like so many people will be down the pub on Friday or finishing work today, and they'll be swinging out these ideas left, right, and centre, an aggregator for this. But I'd say 99% of them don't move from the idea or the frustration into, okay, let's actually do something about this and set up a business. So, how how come it was different from you? And was there a big transition from light bulb moment to right, let's get on with this, or was there a long period of time? Kind of how did that play out?
So it was a really long period of time. I bought the apartment and moved in February 2017. I
Yeah.
didn't leave my job until April 2019.
Okay.
So I was like, here's an idea. I have no idea how to make it happen, if I'll be completely honest.
Yeah.
So I had no idea how a website comes to be. Literally none. Like
Yeah.
no background in
Yeah.
technology whatsoever. No clue. Where'd even go to start it?
Yeah.
And ended up sort of toying with the idea with my then boyfriend, now husband.
Yeah.
And we sort of told him about it. He was like, don't know. And then we sort of started talking about it a little bit more. And I remember there was one very rainy bank holiday weekend in May that you typically get, and we'd gone down the south coast, so we were sitting in a pub, and we started drawing out on a napkin actually, and that was sort of one of the moments where we sort of became a little bit more real. It was like, right, there's
Yeah.
something here. It feels like it has legs. And then he was working in the States, and I remember he rang me up one Sunday and said, right, so I've been doing some research this week and over the weekend here.
Yeah.
Actually, there's nothing like this over here in terms of the solution. Even speaking to the
Hmm.
guys at work, it's the same frustration that they have, whereby their other half, it's typically a female sort of
Yeah.
purchasing decision, so
Yeah.
stereotyping, is looking on Pinterest. She sees some things, but then she can't find it. And
Yeah.
she's having the same frustration. And it was at that moment that we sort of realised, okay, there's something bigger here. Let's go and do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was a long time in the making. And I suppose it was number one, sort of that sort of continual just questioning, asking people, oh, you just bought a house. How was it? Was
Yeah.
it frustrating? What did you do? How did you go about it? But I suppose the other bit then was actually probably finding a co-founder, somebody who could, come in and have the skill set that I was lacking. That meant that we could come together and actually bring it and bring it to fruition, and from that idea on paper into something that was real.
And talk me through that bit. So you've got to the kind of like primitive wire framing, let's say, napkin and a pub.
Yeah.
So you're starting to kind of visualize what it could be. At that point, are you kind of doing kind of like a skills gap analysis in terms of like, this is what I know and this is what I don't know. So therefore I need to go find a co-founder that can help me with these other elements?
Um, I don't think it was that conscious around it.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
like, there's an idea here. I've got no idea how to do it. I can do certain bits, but like, he was like, okay, but I could do these bits. And then you were sort of
Yeah.
like a no-brainer. Okay, well, we can do this together. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like, I need a co-founder to do this and I've
Yeah.
identified this person. It sort of just organically happened. And it just so happened that my, boyfriend at the time had the perfect skill set to be very complementary to mine to make it happen.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
feel like we were consciously doing that, but yes,
Yeah.
it's probably in reality that was sort of what was happening. Like, I don't know, a big what if. I'm like, I wonder if he wasn't able to do that, I wonder would I have ever brought it out, or
Taken.
how I would
Yeah.
have got a co-founder, would it have happened? I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, I suppose from kind of realizing that you had a good skill set that was kind of working well together, did you immediately kind of stop working in terms of your job at the time, or did you start to kind of carve out time between yourselves to start experimenting and building out a prototype or concepts? Like how did you kind of structure that kind of next phase?
Yeah, so at this point, I was working in investment banking, so I was working about 16-hour days, including most weekends. So
So
didn't have much
loads of
time
time, loads of
to
time.
carve out, yeah,
Yeah.
and think about it. So, what we decided to do was that actually my co-founder Ray would leave his job
Okay.
and I was still working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because to get a prototype up and running, that was his department and his skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we did. And I can remember texting him on a Friday being like, oh, I'm going for drinks after work, come in to the city. And he's like, no, I've got to get stuff done. And I was like, all right, God, that's a bit boring. So I was definitely a bit detached in
Yeah.
terms of not being in it in
Yeah.
the same way that he was. But
Yeah.
that's why we're such a good team, because he's as motivated and about persistent around solving it, that it was like, okay,
Yeah.
stay working on that and I'll go for drinks after work then on the Friday. So it was like, it sort of worked out well in terms of we were able to sort of stage when we left. And I can still remember once we got it live and he rang me up this day, I was at work and he was like, somebody's just made a sale. I was like, what?
Oh, that.
Like, do we know them? Do we know them though? Because that doesn't count if we know them. I was like, no, we don't know them. They're like, oh my God, amazing. How's this happen? And it was that
What
sort of
a.
point of validation. And then
Yeah.
it was shortly after that I quit
Yeah.
my job as well. But there was probably, a good 9 to 12 months in between when he had left versus when I had left.
I'd say that's some dopamine hit though, that first sale, where, as you say, you've no connection to this person. They genuinely have found your concept and decided this is what I need, and fully gone through on it. So it sounds like then the MVP was actually quite well developed before you even left your job, in terms of you were actively selling through the platform. So did Ray kind of essentially go and build it himself, or did you go find an agency or an individual developer that could get that initial first product live?
Yeah, no, we worked with an agency to get the initial MVP live. And look,
Yeah.
it was functional. That's actually probably the nicest thing I could say about it. It's been completely scrapped since then. And that's
I
like,
can imagine you were nice and blunt.
you were like, look, it must have been fairly developed. And I was like, it was something. But you're reading books like The Lean Startup, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not exactly good enough. And we often reflect back, and you're like, what would you do differently? And sometimes it's really hard to answer,
Yeah.
because we could have built a much bigger MVP that was much more functional than what we had. But would we have spent a lot of money, and would we have still scrapped it?
Yeah.
What you did along the way, it's about getting to the next step all the time, I think, in
Yeah.
one way. And you can be overly harsh on yourself thinking, oh, we should have done this differently. But, it was the best decision at the time based on the information that we had, and keep moving forward in some ways.
Yeah. So having kind of got that MVP to that stage, at what point of the business did you feel it was at that gave you comfort to say, right, I'm going to quit my job and go full time into this?
So it was really around the opportunity was coming very clear, and this is a big business to build. You're building a full search platform.
Yeah.
So we bring all of the retailers onto one platform. It's, hundreds of products, hundreds of retailers, millions of products. And that's no mean feat. And we knew we were going to have to raise money to build a business of our size. It's an economies of scale business as well.
Yeah.
So it was very clear around, right, we're going to need to go out and raise finance. And that very much was back into my skill set.
Yeah.
So we can see the opportunity is there. We've built an MVP, we've validated it. Now is going to take it to the next step in order to continue to build out. So that's probably sort of how it happened on that side, from the business side, realizing that I could leave.
Yeah. And I suppose in terms of getting that first kind of startup capital into the business, trying to back the next stage of it, how did you find that experience of going out and raising finance at that kind of level of maturity that the business was at that stage?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just in hindsight, but it didn't feel that difficult, if I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It definitely took us a little bit longer than we thought, around just having conversations and getting meetings in the diary, and we get cancelled, and then, okay, well, I'm free again in 2 weeks. God, 2 weeks, Jesus, it's so long away. And comes round then. But times like that, that really frustrated me, because I come from investment banking as well. Like, we could do a deal in 2 weeks for like $20 billion.
Yeah.
And like, no, I've got to wait 2 weeks to have another call with this guy. Oh God, that's so long. So that was sort of, I suppose, part of it when we were looking at raising the finance. But we tapped into the people that we'd worked with who knew us.
Yeah.
And actually, when they know that you're a go-getter and very determined, they were quite willing to back you. I suppose fortunate that had come from an industry where people that I'd worked with actually have the ability to invest in companies, because they're typically high earners. So I probably found it a little bit easier than probably most people in that regard.
And were you kind of using the kind of SEIS scheme in the UK to raise capital from those individuals to kind of get you up and running?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
EIS and CIS. Many of
yeah,
them were already investing under that. Some of them we
yeah,
actually had to explain it, and you could explain the concept to them and how it was sort of very tax beneficial.
yeah.
And that's quite nice as well that you feel like
It,
you're helping people to understanding new objectives, but you've also got pressure then because you're like, oh God, this
yeah,
person doesn't know about it, and if I'm their first investment, I need to make it work for them.
it's
Yeah.
true, but it's always quite nice explainer be like, well, actually, if you're going under SEIS, whatever you're giving me here, you're just essentially risking 25% of it. So it's always a pretty nice thing to be able to go and tell them. In terms of that kind of first capital allotment that you got from those early stage backers, how did you think about investing it into the business? Like, what were the kind of key areas that you wanted to spend that initial capital on?
Yeah, so we had three objectives. Number one, it was building a scalable version of the technology. So
Yeah.
knowing that what we built from MVP would have to be scrapped and building a scalable version. Number two was investing in marketing and building a brand. And number three was hiring the team and actually to make that happen.
And so just going through each of those three, the first one I can imagine is quite a technical architecture challenge because, as you alluded to, you've hundreds of retailers that have to have kind of parent type roles within the system, and then they have millions of children essentially with all the different products that you have. And obviously, with the nature of your business, imagery is super important, how a product is positioned and stored. So you're getting into the facet there of like, well, I've got millions of these children here, all with data rich kind of profiles. How was that in terms of breaking that down from a technical architecture challenge of being able to ultimately support this large ecosystem of products?
Yeah, look, that's the big challenge of it, and it's not an easy problem to solve because there's no standardization of the data that's coming through. There's no standardized taxonomy, even of how people refer to things. So that was a huge challenge, but it was actually the third challenge that we had to do first. We had to hire the team first.
Yeah.
And then we sort of looked at how do we hire the people that would enable us to build out the tech. So bringing in a CTO, bringing in engineers, bringing in people to work on the marketing side, and then beginning to scope out with CTO and the team underneath how we were going to bring all that together.
And how did you kind of prioritize those roles? What kind of roles were first through the door, and kind of why did you pick those?
Yeah, so we were hiring for multiple roles.
Yeah.
The first role that we actually hired was an SEO person.
Yep.
And then we had our CTO and the engineers that came in behind that. So,
Yep.
we were hiring for 3 or 4 roles all at once. I think they all landed in a pretty close sort of succession. I think we started in January, and by March we pretty much had people starting in the roles.
And how did you find that kind of recruitment experience? Had you had much experience in terms of recruiting and managing talent in the past, or was this kind of a lot of first time at it?
This was all pretty much first time at it. We worked with an agency who works with a lot of startups and who, comes in on the back of VC or PE funding into companies where they need to grow out the teams. So like they provided us with a lot of help.
Yeah.
We didn't get all the hires right, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of another reflection that I have is that you never will. And we've reflected a lot about what did we do or what would we have done differently or what advice would I give to people. And I
Yeah.
think hiring is really hard. And I think the realization I give to people is that you're going to get it wrong. So
Yeah.
just figure that out as quick as possible and do something about it when you do.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to know what you're hiring for. And look, I
Yeah.
think we've got a hell of a lot better with it. I think we're much clearer as well around what we're expecting because
Yeah.
we didn't know what we were expecting. So it's hard to communicate and to bring that into the interview process. So that was a big part of the journey as well.
So is it kind of the old adage true that if it's not working, it's better to exit the position as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think I heard lately where there is doubt, there is no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in terms of that other point you made there, that's really interesting. So do you feel that was more a case of you guys having more maturity as a business because then you understand kind of what are the metrics most important to you, so therefore it's easier to clarify to someone coming into the business this, if you can change the dial here and here and here, then we're laughing type thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is the skill set. But I think the other big part of it is the cultural fit as well. And where you've got, it's very easy to get overawed by people that have got amazing,
Hmm.
LinkedIn or CVs and all these blue chip companies and things like that. But are they the right people and will they be able to
Yeah,
thrive in an environment that's full of uncertainty and it's not as structured? You need to be an owner, you need to be able to go out and figure things out yourself. And, that's where as well, we've probably not got that right in some of the hires that we brought in on that side. So I think we do a lot better now as well, but we're more transparent. At the beginning, I
yeah,
remember thinking, if we could only get this person because they're
yeah,
so good based on they worked at X company and X company is successful. So
yeah,
you assume that everybody in that company is successful, which is
yeah,
potentially not the
yeah,
case. And then they're like, oh, well, I only want to work 9 to 5. That's okay because I'm just so desperate to get that person. I'm like, it's not okay. It's a startup, not
yeah,
going to be okay. I'm going
yeah,
to get madly frustrated with the fact that you're like, oh no, I can't do that. And you're like, but the job's not done. What do you mean? He's like, oh, sorry, it's 5 o'clock. So it's like
yeah,
that mentality as well of it and what you're expecting. And, it's all of those. So I think that there's two really important things when you're thinking about hiring. So the first is can they do the job or the skill set?
yeah,
But the second is the cultural fit. It is more important because if they're smart, a lot of the time they can learn the job. Like
yeah,
my whole role all the time is doing all of these jobs I'd never traditionally done. But
yeah,
if you've got the initiative and the get up and go, you can achieve it. So we much lean on the cultural side and I want to join, I want to be part of the journey, but not because, oh, it's a startup and joining a startup is sexy and I want to say I work for a startup, but yeah, I still want to have
yeah,
all the perks, healthcare and everything else. You're like, nah, that doesn't really fit. But that's a really
yeah.
good indicator now to us is where before I'd be like trying to make everything
Winning.
align as where I'm now
Yeah,
like, doesn't fit, this is a red flag.
yeah.
They need they actually
I
want a more corporate style job and we will not be the right fit for them.
I think that's such a good observation, and I think it's such a good thing for any kind of newer founders or startups to hear now because that is such not a unique experience to so many businesses 3, 4 years down the line. Everyone has the same concept of
Everybody
being,
says it.
and everyone's like at the beginning being like trying to get like X these big companies, but not thinking of the red flags. Whereas actually, everyone's doing everyone a much bigger favor by being super transparent about what you want and need, and understanding what actually they want and need, and if they don't fit, and
Yeah.
it. That I think just hearing, I even say from personal experience, but I've heard so many people, same as you, D, at that stage, getting those realizations. So it's like if anyone's listening that is at the earliest stages, like just take heed of that. It's so
Yeah.
important and it'll make such a difference in those earlier hires. But it's hard to convey until you've actually experienced it.
Look, I feel like thousands of people, like we've all read it. We have all saw
I
it, but
know, I
actually,
know.
it's like it's one of those things you need to make the mistake yourself.
Yeah,
So I'm like, just be aware this is a mistake you're going to make. You will not get hiring right, but when you do get it wrong, just rectify it as quick as possible. Do not sort of
yeah,
sit there with hope as a strategy.
yeah,
Take the action. That's
yeah,
probably my advice. My action is not get hiring right. It's when
yeah.
you don't take action.
Learn. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, brilliant. Okay, flipping it to the other side of the marketplace, where you're trying to get the demand. Obviously, you want to get as many of these hungry people who want to really make the most beautiful home on planet Earth. But I'd imagine you've got a quite a competitive share of voice there in terms of you've got a huge amount of furniture businesses in their own right, lots of stuff in interior space. So you said the first person to the door on your side was SEO led. I'd imagine there's a reason for that. How did you start to unpick and work within that pretty competitive landscape of getting eyeballs in that interior space?
Yeah, so look, it's probably a mixture of everything that you would expect from paid. I think always plays quite a big part in early stages of businesses.
Yeah.
But also PR really powerful, helps to drive messaging as well in a very different way when you can get a publication to write about you and
Hmm.
explain what your
Hmm.
business does. Like very strong traffic on the back of that. We also worked with partners as well to try and tap in, so where they were home related, that was really good. But like SEO was one of the identified opportunities very early on to say, well, actually, there's a lot of people searching, and if you're looking for your arched mirror that is behind me, how many retailers have multiple of those? So if we've got
Yeah.
50 of them from across the market, actually we're the most relevant search return to a consumer. So
Yeah.
how do we make sure that we're getting that across? So
Yeah.
that was a big strategy at the beginning for us.
And in terms of like looking at that top of funnel, are you constantly optimizing that kind of channel mix between paid SEO, partner PR, or have you kind of got a set breakdown of how you allocate resources to it now, or is it a constant experiment?
No, it's a constant experiment, and I think the world is changing at a much bigger rate. Like even since we launched, how many more social media platforms are there
Yeah.
out there as well in terms of acquisition channels?
Hmm.
There's a lot
Hmm.
more, not less. So traditionally, I think it was quite set where you are, and obviously COVID and has massively changed that as well of where people are and where you can target them. So it's all constantly changing. So I think we need to be much more adaptable rather than execute and strategize and just put it into execution. You need to be consistently testing and learning.
Yeah. And then in terms of flipping back to the mirrors now, how did you find going out and onboarding John Lewis or Wayfair or all of these different wholesalers and retailers that you have on the platform? Was that an easy thing or did that take time to get them onboarded?
Yeah, so this was very much ran by my co-founder, and it was a tough sell at the beginning because
Hmm.
you're selling this is hypothetically what we're going to build. It's
Yeah.
not real. It's not there. So we didn't win them all at first. We had to go back and keep them updated, and that was a progressive a period of like progression, going back and talking to them time and time again to explain where we are and what we're doing and why we're relevant. So yeah, not a quick win, long game.
And in terms of kind of adapting the platform to get the right audience or the right supplier, how much have you changed it based on the kind of as customers increase and understanding who that customer is and what their demographic is? Has that helped you kind of change your tactics on either side in terms of what you bring on or how you target them?
Yeah, so like absolutely, like a lot of things get tweaked. I would say our main vision and the main product, the concept has not ever changed
Yeah.
because it was very clear around what the problem was and what we are doing. How we do it changes all the time around different feedback, that consistent feedback loop that I was talking about. But we maybe are a little bit unique in that way that we had such a defined problem area that we were trying to solve at the beginning that we've never changed from that core.
Hmm. Hmm. And then going back to kind of the initial building blocks, so you brought in that initial kind of early stage investment from the SEIS to bring in, as you say, the initial talent, looking to bring in the kind of marketing function in terms of bringing in top of funnel and setting out a new architecture that could support a really scalable platform. Having kind of achieved those elements, what was next in terms of what did you need to do as a business and what kind of funding did you need to go and achieve that?
Yeah, so we've continued to raise investment since then, and it's all about progression. So showing, right, we've built the scalable version, we've hired the team, we've launched a brand. Now this is the next phase of growth that we need to go through, and that will involve not just launching the brand, but growing it to this size and to this
Hmm.
size and to this size
Hmm.
and to this size. So you're just constantly proving proof points along the way to go back to investors and to say, right, we've now progressed to this. This is what we've learned. This is how we've reevaluated the opportunity and how the timeframes are to achieving it and what we need to do in order to achieve it.
Hmm.
And saying, so therefore, we are raising X, and with that, we want to deliver Y. Who's in, getting more people on board, getting follow on from existing investors. So yeah, it's been a consistent period of, grow, take investment, set the strategy, grow again, take more investment, and you just continue that.
And how do you find the time management aspect of that? Because obviously raising investment is can be really energy sapping and also time consuming. How do you manage that as well as keeping the business strategy and direction going in the right trajectory that you're setting out?
Yeah, so I suppose that's the job. It's not a 9 to 5 job. Just to be super clear on that. But you have to keep all the balls being juggled all of the time, and you'll have weeks or months where one of them is a bigger priority, and then it sort of comes back a little bit, and you go into the other ones. But ultimately that is the constant management of making sure that you're pushing all elements of the business forward. And like there's always an area that you're never happy with.
Yeah.
I think I figured this out. I'm like, there'll always be a weakest link. Nothing will ever be perfect, because even when this, and this are perfect, I'm like, oh, but this could be improved. And that then becomes the weakest link. So this was one of the concepts I sort of thought about. I had this moment of like, aha. I was like, oh, but like if we get this one, then everything is singing and everything is perfect. But no, because then something else comes to your attention. So there's always, I'm calling it the weakest link.
That really resonates. I always had it as like whack-a-mole, in terms of there was always something that's going to raise its head that you had to go and deal with. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is so true. Um, in terms of kind of like where you're at now, you mentioned at the beginning, Ray had that realization of being in the States and chatting to colleagues and being like, actually, obviously there's 300 whatever million people there, and his connections are like, there doesn't seem to be anything in this market. Like, how are you thinking about it from an internationalization perspective? Are you focusing on a couple of core markets first, or are you thinking on a bigger scale at all times?
Yeah, so the way that we approached it, I think people have two routes to internationalization: go early or go late.
Yeah,
Um, and what we really wanted to do was focus down in one market, establish the business, the commerciality before we distracted management times and working in multiple markets. So, I think we're doing a fantastic job in the UK. We've got hundreds of retailers from John Lewis to SCS to Benson's for Beds, SLF24 and Dustville, names that you know, names that you don't.
yeah,
We've got, millions of products and millions of searches now happening every single month. So what we're looking at is amazing. How do we then, bring it through to that profitability in the UK before then looking at, right, which is the next markets that we want to go and look at?
yep, makes sense. And then I suppose just bring it forward to the kind of here and the now. Obviously, 2019, April 2019 doesn't seem that long ago in terms of finishing up your job and getting into it, but I'd imagine those 4 years have moved extraordinarily quickly. What is 2023 in terms of your role within the business? How is that different to what's gone on in the years prior?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. So I think the years prior were about build, as where 2023 is about growth.
Yeah,
So you'll always be building,
yeah,
but I would say we're out of that build stage, and it's now about actually how do we grow as our main function and continue then to enhance everything with extra bills and everything like that. But growth.
yeah. I suppose then one kind of final question then for me, kind of again, we're now in this kind of change from build to grow phase. How have you enjoyed the experience from taking the plunge, quitting what you were doing, and jumping into, as you quite clearly say, not a 9 to 5, multi-hat, crazy world? Have you enjoyed it? Are you excited where you are? Very very curious to hear what your thoughts are there.
So I had a meeting in Canary Wharf yesterday,
Yeah.
and after it, Ray asked me, he was like, "Do you regret, not being in your big tower there and that?" And I was like, "There's not been one moment that I've regretted it, not one.
Yeah.
Um, the only thing I miss is the money." Um, But I would say, as a person, I've grown so much, and it's been painful at times. Personal
Yeah.
growth is not fun to go through, and you see all your flaws and different bits of where you need to develop. But it's amazing the progress and what you can do and what you've achieved outside of. When you work in a corporate job, you do a little niche and you think this is what I can do really well. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And all of a sudden you can. And I think to see the progression of it, it's the most wonderful feeling in the world, because it's yours and you're so in control of the outputs. Having said that, and I've shared with you as well, it's like some of the lows though, my God, they were lower than you'd ever feel a low in a corporate job, because it
Yeah.
really goes to your core and
Yeah.
affects you so much with it. But like overall, absolutely love it. I've learned so much. And we're just getting started as well, so it's the excitement and the opportunity that's always there driving you. Maybe I'm still working 16-hour days, but it doesn't feel like work. you
Yeah.
know we had a holiday booked to Barbados, and I said to Ray, I was like, I think we need to cancel the holiday because we need to have these meetings. And he was like, I was wondering how to bring it up to you. And I was like, all right, great, we're both in alignment. Like, that's a bit sad, but like, that's how much we love the business and doing it. It's
Yeah.
not work. It's
Yeah.
like you want to do it. You want to work on a Saturday because you know you'll get the output and that drives it forward. So it's nearly like an addiction in terms of
Yeah.
building the business.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I can't think of a better way to wrap it up there in terms of getting that kind of reaction of kind of your experiences today, obviously with highs and lows, but ultimately that you're in a sense of high productivity, but it's not a sense of doing it for hours. It's doing it out of a love and a passion. So yeah, thank you so much, Dee, for coming on and sharing the experience. There's actually just so many good nuggets and insights there for anyone going through this journey to kind of reflect on. So really appreciate you sharing it, and obviously wish everything success for yourself and Ray, and obviously the whole you furnish business as well.
Super.
Thank you
Thank you for
very
having
much.
me.
Yeah, awesome.